In a shocking moment at a global event, former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton openly referred to Burkina Faso's young President Ibrahim Traoré as a dictator. Many expected him to fire back in anger, but what Traoré did instead left the room stunned. His calm, powerful response flipped the entire narrative, silenced critics, and won admiration worldwide. This unforgettable exchange is now going viral, showing that true leadership isn't about insults. It's about dignity, composure, and strength under pressure. The hall was filled with cameras, journalists, and world leaders. It was a major international forum where issues of peace, cooperation, and leadership were being discussed. Suddenly, the atmosphere cracked. Hillary Clinton, with a stern face and firm voice, turned to President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso and said, "You are nothing more than a dictator." The room fell silent. Gasps rippled through the audience. No one could believe the words had been spoken so openly, so sharply in front of leaders from every continent. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats, waiting for an explosion. Others held their breath, expecting Traoré to fire back in anger. But he didn't. He just sat quietly, his young face calm, his eyes steady. The cameras zoomed in, trying to catch the reaction. People online began typing furiously, clips spreading instantly across social media. In that moment, everyone wondered, would Traoré lash out, defend himself with fury, or walk away? The silence was almost unbearable. Something unexpected was about to happen. Something that would make the world stop and listen. For several long seconds, Ibrahim Traoré said nothing. His silence was heavy, like thunder building before a storm. The world waited. His aides fidgeted nervously while other leaders exchanged glances. Hillary's words still hung in the air like poison. Traoré finally stood up. His movements were calm, deliberate. Instead of raising his voice, he reached for the microphone. "Madam Clinton," he began softly, "I understand your words come from a place of history, a place of fear. But let me tell you something you do not know." His tone was steady, his words clear enough for even a child to follow. He spoke of his country, how Burkina Faso had suffered for decades under corruption, exploitation, and neglect. He reminded the world that he had chosen sacrifice over comfort, stepping into leadership not for power, but for dignity and survival. Every sentence struck the room like a drum beat. He wasn't defending himself with anger. He was defending his people with truth. The cameras caught Hillary's eyes flickering, her expression shifting. But Traoré wasn't done. He was about to reveal something no one had expected. As the audience leaned forward, Traoré reached into his jacket pocket. Slowly, carefully, he pulled out a folded photograph. The paper looked old, edges worn from being handled too many times. "This," he said, holding it up for the cameras, "is my mother. She raised me with nothing. She sold bread on the street so I could go to school. She taught me never to bow to oppression, never to betray my people, and never to use power to crush the weak." The photo showed a tired but smiling woman in a small market stall. The room grew still again. Reporters lowered their pens. Even hardened diplomats blinked back tears. Traoré's voice trembled slightly, but it was not weakness. It was strength wrapped in emotion. "If standing for my people, refusing to let them starve, refusing to kneel before those who exploit us makes me a dictator in your eyes, then so be it." The room erupted in whispers. Online, the image of the young president holding up his mother's photo was already spreading, but the true shock was still yet to come. After showing his mother's photograph, Traoré didn't sit down. Instead, he looked across the hall, his gaze sweeping over presidents, ministers, and business magnates. His next words were not just for Hillary Clinton, they were for the entire world. "Tell me," he said firmly, "what do you call a leader who refuses to sell his country's gold for pennies? Who refuses to let children go hungry while foreign corporations take everything? Is he a dictator, or is he a protector? The audience shifted uneasily. Some bowed their heads, ashamed. Others avoided his eyes. Hillary folded her arms, trying to appear unmoved, but the tension was clear. Traoré's voice rose slightly, filled with conviction. Burkina Faso is poor in money, but rich in soul. My people do not ask me for luxury, they ask me for dignity, and I will not fail them. Cameras captured every second. Online, hashtags were already trending, debates raging in every corner of the internet. Yet in that hall, all that mattered was the truth standing before them. Traoré's questions still echoed in the air, demanding an answer no one could easily give. The room buzzed with murmurs, but Traoré suddenly did something no one expected. He walked away from the podium and toward the front row toward Hillary Clinton herself. Security tensed, ready to intervene, but Traoré raised his hand calmly. When he reached her, he did not scold her. He did not point fingers. Instead, he gently placed the photograph of his mother on the table before her. His voice softened. Look at her face. Tell me if this woman raised a dictator, or if she raised a son who loves his people. The hall froze. Hillary looked down at the photo, her lips pressed tight. The camera zoomed in on her face, capturing every flicker of hesitation. She did not pick it up, but she did not push it away either. Gasps filled the air as the audience realized what had just happened. Traoré had turned an insult into a moment of humanity, shifting the spotlight from power to compassion. For many in the room, it was no longer about politics. It was about a mother's sacrifice, a son's promise, and a nation's fight for dignity. Traoré turned back toward the audience and stood tall. He didn't speak for several long moments. He just let the silence breathe, forcing everyone to reflect. Slowly, people began to rise from their seats one by one. First, a few African leaders stood in quiet respect. Then, European diplomats followed, uncertain but compelled by the gravity of the moment. Soon even journalists in the press section rose, cameras still rolling. It was not applause. It was something deeper. Silent recognition. The only person still seated was Hillary Clinton. She remained motionless, her hands folded tightly together. The contrast was striking. For Traoré, it was never about humiliating her. It was about showing the world that strength could exist without arrogance, that dignity could disarm hostility. The silence in that hall grew heavier than any speech. Online, viewers watching the live stream began flooding the chat with tears, prayers, and messages of support. In less than an hour, the clip would go viral across continents. But at that moment in that hall, history was being written without a single sound. The forum ended in uneasy silence, but the whispers began almost immediately. Diplomats huddled in corners. Journalists rushed to send updates, and social media boiled with reactions. Some accused Hillary Clinton of arrogance, while others debated whether Traoré's calm response was calculated brilliance or pure instinct. Meanwhile, Traoré walked calmly back to his delegation. His aides looked shaken, but he reassured them with a nod. "We did not come here to fight," he whispered. "We came here to be heard." In the hotel corridors that night, rumors swirled. Several African leaders privately approached Traoré, thanking him for showing courage they often felt but rarely expressed. One whispered, "You spoke for all of us." Outside, protests began in small waves. In New York, Paris, Ouagadougou, people carried signs with Traoré's image, calling him the voice of dignity. The moment had already escaped the walls of that hall, but the real storm was yet to come. A video clip of Traoré placing his mother's photo before Hillary had begun trending worldwide. Within hours, it would become the most watched political clip of the year. By morning, the world was awake to a firestorm. The video had spread across Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. Hashtags like you voice of dignity and chug Traoré moment dominated the internet. Millions watched as the young president stood tall, refusing anger, choosing dignity. Comment sections filled with tears and admiration. Strangers wrote, "This made me cry for a country I've never visited. And if this is dictatorship, then the world needs more dictators like him." Others shared stories of their own mothers, connecting deeply with the image of sacrifice Traoré had shown. In Burkina Faso, people gathered in public squares, watching the replay on giant screens. Some wept openly, others raised their fists in pride. For a country often painted as poor and forgotten, this moment felt like justice. Even in America, commentators debated fiercely on live TV. Was Hillary wrong to use such words? Did Traoré redefine what leadership looked like? The debates were heated, but one thing was clear. The young leader had captured hearts across the globe. And yet, with all the attention, pressure was mounting. What Traoré chose to do next would either cement this moment in history or erase it. On the third day, a sealed letter arrived at Traoré's hotel suite. It bore the official crest of the U.S. State Department. His aides eyed it nervously, unsure whether to open it. Traoré took it calmly, broke the seal, and read in silence. The message was short but heavy. Hillary Clinton requested a private meeting away from cameras, away from the public eye. The room fell quiet. His aides debated fiercely. "It could be a trap," one warned. "She might want to corner you, make you apologize." Another argued, "This could be a chance to change everything." Traoré listened, then folded the letter carefully. "If she wishes to speak," he said softly, "then we must listen. Dignity is not only shown in public, it is proven in private." The decision was made. The meeting would take place the next evening. The world did not know yet. But behind closed doors, two figures would sit face to face. One accused of arrogance, the other accused of tyranny. And what happened there would set the tone for the rest of the week. The private meeting was set in a quiet room inside the United Nations building. Curtains were drawn, security guards stood outside, and only a handful of trusted aides were allowed near the door. Inside, Ibrahim Traoré and Hillary Clinton sat across from each other at a small table. The air was heavy. Hillary spoke first, her voice sharp but slightly restrained. "Mr. President, you embarrass me before the entire world. That photograph, your speech, it was a performance." Traoré leaned forward, his expression calm. "No, Madam Clinton, it was not a performance. It was my life." He paused, then added softly, "I did not come here to fight you. I came here to remind the world that Africa's children deserve dignity, too." For a moment, Hillary had no reply. She tapped her fingers on the table, her eyes narrowing. Then she asked, "Do you really believe the world will listen to you?" Traoré answered with quiet conviction, "They already are." The silence that followed was deeper than any argument. Something had shifted in that room, though neither of them fully understood it yet. While Traoré was in the meeting, his phone buzzed. His aides had silenced it, but when he finally returned to his suite, they handed it to him. It was a video call from his younger sister in Ouagadougou. Her face appeared on the screen, tears shining in her eyes. "Brother, the whole city is watching you," she said. "People are gathering in the streets every night. They are proud, but they are also afraid for you." Behind her, the sound of drums and chants filled the air. Children waved tiny flags. Women sang old songs of resistance. The people were not just watching their leader. They were holding on to his every word. Traoré felt his throat tighten. He had faced soldiers. He had faced hunger. But seeing his sister cry for him pierced deeper than any insult. "Tell them not to fear," he whispered. "As long as I stand, they will never kneel." The call ended, but his heart burned brighter. He knew the days ahead would not just test him, they would define him. The following morning, the world woke to an unexpected shock. A leaked audio recording from inside the private meeting between Hillary and Traoré had surfaced online. No one knew how it got out, but the content spread like wildfire. In the clip, Hillary's voice could be heard saying, "Do you really believe the world will listen to you?" Followed by Traoré's calm reply, "They already are." The internet erupted. Commentators called it the line of the century. Memes flooded timelines. Posters were printed overnight, and hashtags multiplied. But the leak also raised questions. Who had released the recording? Was it one of Hillary's team trying to spin the story, or someone close to Traoré proving his strength? In Burkina Faso, young people painted his words on walls, chanting them in the streets across Africa. The phrase became a rallying cry for dignity and independence. For Hillary, the leak was a humiliation. For Traoré, it was another wave in a storm that was growing bigger each day. And for the world, it was proof that the quiet dignity of one man could echo louder than any shout. On the fifth day, something remarkable happened. Across African universities, young students organized spontaneous gatherings from Dar to Nairobi, from Lagos to Ouagadougou. They projected the leaked video of Traoré's words on walls and screens. Crowds chanted in unison, "They already are. They already are." It was no longer just about one leader. It had become a symbol of youth rising against humiliation and hopelessness. In Ouagadougou, children painted Traoré's mother's face on cardboard signs, carrying them proudly in the streets. Old women wept as they watched. One said to a journalist, "We suffered in silence for so long. Now even our tears are seen." News anchors worldwide were caught off guard by the tidal wave of support. Analysts debated how one moment of dignity could spark so much hope. That evening, Traoré received reports from his aides. A single sentence had united a continent's youth. He sat quietly staring at his mother's photograph again. His lips pressed into a faint smile, but his eyes glistened with unspoken emotion. On the sixth day, an unexpected invitation arrived. Leaders of the African Union sent word. They wanted Traoré to address a special emergency session broadcast live to the world. Some of his aides hesitated. "It's risky. If you speak again, every word will be dissected. One mistake, and they will twist it against you." But Traoré shook his head. When the truth is burning, silence becomes betrayal. "I will go." The announcement electrified the media. Networks prepared live coverage. Commentators sharpened their opinions, and millions prepared to watch. Social media buzzed. Would Traoré confront Hillary again? Would he speak about colonial exploitation? Would he remain as calm as before? Hillary's team meanwhile scrambled. Some urged her to ignore him, others to issue a statement first, but she stayed silent, calculating. As Traoré prepared his speech, he wrote not on a tablet or laptop, but by hand on simple sheets of paper. "Words must come from the heart," he told his secretary. The stage was being set for a moment that could either break him or immortalize him. The hall of the African Union was packed. Cameras from every continent zoomed in. Leaders filled their seats, tension thick in the air. When Traoré walked in, the applause was hesitant at first, then grew louder, wave after wave, until it thundered. He placed his handwritten notes on the podium. His voice was steady, clear, simple. "I was called a dictator," he began. "But tell me, is a dictator a man who carries his mother's memory into every decision? Is a dictator someone who would rather be hated by the powerful than betray the weak?" The room grew still. Some leaders bowed their heads, others clenched their fists. His words were not polished like a politician's. They were raw, human, undeniable. Then, unexpectedly, his voice broke. "My mother is no longer here to see this. But if she could, she would remind me." Dignity is worth more than life. His eyes welled up. The hall fell silent, then slowly. People began to cry. Leaders, journalists, even security guards. It was no longer just a speech. It was history written in tears. As Traoré words echoed through the African Union Hall, journalists rushed to broadcast every second live. Around the world, people stopped what they were doing to watch. In cafes, on buses, in homes, screens flickered with his image. Back in Washington, Hillary Clinton watched from her private office. For the first time, her expression softened. The woman known for her iron will leaned back in her chair and whispered to an aide, This is not what I expected." Meanwhile, in Burkina Faso, thousands filled the streets. Young people carried candles, old women clutched photographs of their children, and men sang freedom songs from generations past. It was no longer just about politics. It was about identity, pride, and a young leader who dared to speak differently. Traoré ended his speech with a powerful line. "If leadership without chains is dictatorship, then may the world know we choose our chains to be broken." The hall erupted, but not in noise. It erupted in tears. Later that evening, the unimaginable happened. Hillary Clinton walked unannounced into the African Union building. Cameras scrambled, flashes burst, and whispers spread like wildfire. She requested the microphone. Her face was pale, her voice slower than usual. "I have spent decades in politics. I have met leaders from every corner of the world. But today, I saw something rare. A leader who spoke not with power, but with heart." Gasps filled the room. People could not believe what they were hearing. She glanced at Traoré, her voice trembling slightly. "Perhaps I was wrong to call you a dictator. What I saw was a son honoring his mother, and a man protecting his people." The crowd broke into applause. Traoré stood, walked toward her, and simply placed his hand on his chest in respect. No words, just dignity. For the first time in years, Hillary Clinton seemed moved. Her eyes glistened, and the cameras caught it. That moment traveled faster than lightning across the internet. By the seventh day, the world had changed. Streets from Ouagadougou to Paris carried murals of Traoré's mother's smile. Universities quoted his words in classrooms. Children wore shirts that read, "They already are." International news declared it the weak dignity defeated insult. Commentators admitted they had never seen a confrontation end in such grace. Traoré returned to Burkina Faso, not with trophies or money, but with something more valuable, the love and pride of his people. As his plane landed, crowds surrounded the airport. Some cried, some sang. All lifted their hands toward him. He walked out holding that same old photograph of his mother, raising it high. It was not just his victory. It was theirs. The story would live on as a reminder that true leadership is not measured by anger or revenge, but by the courage to respond with humanity. Dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, let me ask you, would you stand with dignity like Ibrahim Traoré did? Share your feelings in the comments below. I want to read every single one. Don't forget to like this video if it made you emotional, and subscribe so you never miss stories that reveal the true power of courage and humanity. Your support keeps these stories alive. Music,